Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Darug people, and pay my respect to elders both past and present of the land which we speak today.
The first dance we're going to perform now is going to be the dance of the welcome. In our language for the welcome, we say Yama. This dance comes from the land of the Gomeroi people, central northern New South Wales.
And with that, we'd like to welcome you to Naidoc Week at Borco. Naidoc Week celebrations are held all across Australia each July to celebrate the history, culture and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Naidoc is celebrated not only in Indigenous communities but by Australians from all walks of life. The week is all about participating in a range of activities in support of our local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community.
This year's theme for Naidoc Week is Always Was and Always Will Be. Naidoc 2020 invites us to embrace the true history of this country, a history which dates back thousands of generations. It's all about seeing, hearing and learning the First Nations history of this country, Australian history.
Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders have worked to overcome the negative effects of colonialism, stood up for their rights and land, and ultimately opened up the conversation on cultural diversity. Together, they stand strong and proud of their culture and are fighting to preserve and educate others on the importance of the first Australians.
And this is why we feel it's so important for our school community to be involved in Naidoc Week, as we stand alongside our fellow Indigenous Australians, continuing to remember the lessons of the past and doing our part to actively create meaningful dialogue in order to keep Indigenous culture alive. Indigenous culture always has and always will be a key part of this nation's history and identity.
Hey guys, it's Maxwell and William, and right now we're going to be talking to you about the history of Naidoc.
So in the 1920s and 30s, Aboriginal rights groups such as the Australian Aborigines Progressive Association emerged in protest against the status and treatment of Indigenous Australians. However, their efforts were largely overlooked, and due to police harassment, they abandoned their work.
On Australia Day in 1938, protesters again emerged, followed by a congress attended by over 1,000 people. It was one of the first major civil rights gatherings in the world, known as the Day of Mourning. The significance of this day, despite lack of any real legal change for Aboriginal people, led to interest in supporting and promoting an annual event for Aboriginal people.
For the next few decades, major Aboriginal organisations, state and federal governments supported the formation of Naidoc, the National Aborigines Day Observance Committee. In 1991, with a growing awareness of the distinct cultural histories of both Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people, the committee was expanded to include Torres Strait Islander people to form Naidoc.
Naidoc is not just a single day, but a week, and each year a theme is chosen to reflect the important issues and events for Naidoc. The theme for 2020, Always Was, Always Will Be, acknowledges and celebrates that our nation's story didn't begin with the documented European contact, but the very first footprints on this continent were those belonging to the First Nation peoples.
The significance of coming together to celebrate and acknowledge Naidoc Week, it's about our people and our mob coming together to share in the culture and the richness of that culture that we have to offer, and also to share in one's history and make some connection with our mob within our communities, but to express the wisdom that we have amongst our own.
It's an opportunity to be able to share culture, to educate the rest of us in Australia about our Indigenous brothers and sisters, to join in their celebrations, to view from their point, to understand more their identity and their spirituality.
So Naidoc this year is very important for all of us in our community right across the whole of Australia. For every Aboriginal person, where we come together to be proud of our history, of our race, our connection to one's country, and to acknowledge our elders is really important right across from our schools and also into the parishes.
And it's very moving to be able to work and journey with our brothers and sisters in their pain and in their joys, in their struggle for recognition still at this time for who they are, and to be able to enjoy our coming together.
The Darug people are an Aboriginal people who, in pre-colonial times, lived scattered throughout much of what is known as modern-day Sydney. They were split into 15 different clans, which encompassed around 6,000 kilometres squares of land.
During the late 1700s and early 1800s, smallpox introduced by British settlers wiped out up to 90% of the Darug population in some areas. Through acknowledging and respecting the people who once lived on this land and their descendants who still live on this land, we can ensure our modern day celebration and understanding is holistic and true.
Aboriginal people have lived in Australia for at least 50,000 years. That's 1,000 times older than our school. Before European settlement, there were over 500 Indigenous nations in Australia. Film, art, music and dance is a vital part of Aboriginal culture, dating back at least 30,000 years. These are all different ways for Aboriginal people to tell Dreamtime stories and connect with their environment. For example, performers imitate animals when dancing to the sound of a didgeridoo at ceremonies. Movies with Aboriginal people were rare before 1995, but now there are over 10 movies made each year with Aboriginal content in them, plus a free-to-air national Indigenous television channel. Most Aboriginal Australians refer to their worldview as the dreaming. This is a term that describes their beliefs towards the universe's creation, as well as the rules that govern Indigenous relationships, economics, and ceremonies. The dreaming is also a period of time, in fact the very beginning as we know it. During this, the ancestral spirits came from the earth and sky to walk on the land, creating land formations, people, animals, and vegetation. It was these spirit ancestors who gave Aboriginal people the laws, customs, and codes of conduct, and who are the source of the songs, dances, designs, languages, and rituals that are the basis of Aboriginal religious expression. The Rainbow Serpent is one of the Dreamtime creators, a Dreamtime story that is uniquely common to all Aboriginal tribes. Let's hear the story now.
In the old days in Dreamtime, there were only people, and they roamed a flat world. But one day the rainbow serpent, Guriella, woke up and went in search of his tribe. On his way there, he created the landscape of mountains and hills. The other people followed Guriella. And very soon, Guriella found his tribe. He danced, and when it got late, slept in his tent. Two boys came to Guriella looking for a place to sleep, and he invited them into his mouth. After which, Guriella snuck off for fear that he would be caught. When the tribe awoke the next morning, they were angry and went in search of the boys and Guriella. When they found Guriella, they snuck up on him in his sleep and cut the boys out of his stomach. The boys had been transformed into parakeets and flew away. When Guriella woke up to find his stomach cut open, he became enraged. He began shaking the mountain, and rocks began flying towards the people. And the people, as they tried to escape, turned into birds and trees and animals. Eventually, Guriella got tired of this and escaped into the sea, leaving us the people with our brothers, the plants, and animals to look after.
Smoking ceremony was a gesture of goodwill, bringing people together and healing. There's smoking when there's a burial, there's smoking when there's a celebration, and there's smoking for clearance and healing also. So it's not just about lighting up a fire, sometimes it's about how we light that fire, and different leaves. Some mob will use some particular kind of leaf, someone would use another leaf, different smoke, different woods and that for different ceremonies. We must look at the young thin ones, they can burn pretty quick with the oils in them, so we've got to get the big old hardier ones, or sometimes we've got to be near water where we dampen the oils and stuff that's in the leaves.
So we've got three types of leaves there now. So we've got Sydney red gum, we've got Sydney peppermint, and we've got red bloodwood.
The most important thing that you should do when a smoking ceremony is being performed, when you're in it, just accept it. It's a gift, and our people are offering this healing and this blessing. So just accept it and take a bit and just waft it around you. Take whatever's on offer that is thousands of years old. Some of the oldest ceremonies in the world today that is still being practiced. Celebration was a very important part of a joyous occasion, and making fire and then smoke, cleansing an area so that people could get on together and live in harmony. It's so important to be included on Australia Day because we can make that day also our day. This big celebration, it's so important that our mob should be forefront. There's always a healing property within those. It's so important to me, Australia Day, is bringing people together, raising the awareness of other people around us, coming together of all cultures. Because the most important thing about this is that we walk the same land, we drink the same water, and we breathe the same air.
There are many Aboriginal people who are famous for a variety of reasons, such as sport, music, and acting.
One such person is Tanya Orman. Tanya Orman is a Biri and Guugu Yimidi woman from North Queensland. She grew up in the 80s, and as a young child, Tanya was very passionate about storytelling. When she went to school, she realised that the stories she heard about her community were very disparate to what she came home to.
During the 1990s, the depiction of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander stories in mainstream media was seen as a reason for the stereotypes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Tanya dreamed of changing the stereotype.
In 2007, Tanya was invited to be one of the first commissioning editors for the new narrowcaster, National Indigenous Television. She helped conceive NITV, an Australian TV channel that broadcasts programs predominantly produced by Indigenous Australians. When it first launched in Naidoc Week on 13 July 2007, it marked a new era for Indigenous television.
In 2011, Tanya Orman became, and still continues to be, the channel manager of NITV. Tanya says, "Today at NITV, we are creating groundbreaking children's programming, achieving critical acclaim. We have a newsroom of Indigenous journalists delivering trusted and respected coverage of issues that matter to our communities and holding power to account."
As NITV's channel manager, she helped lead the organisation's transition into the SBS network and launch as a free-to-air channel. Tanya Orman, a small-town kid surrounded by coal mines and cattle stations, who dreamed of becoming a journalist, is now one of Australia's youngest television executives, and she uses her position to shape the national narrative through the storytelling of the world's oldest culture.
We all need to do our part in helping to bridge the disparity in society between communities and make a collective us. Australia is faced with systemic racism, and often we tell ourselves that this isn't my problem, or I don't know any Aboriginal people, therefore I shouldn't care. But the reality is we should make a change for hundreds of thousands of people to have better lives. Here are some facts about Aboriginal people today.
670,000 people, which is 3% of Australia, are Indigenous Australians, and they are 14 times more likely to be imprisoned. Only 3% of Aboriginal people complete a university degree, and the life expectancy is 10 years less than non-Indigenous Australians. However, organisations such as Career Trackers and AIME are determined to create better futures for Indigenous youth.
And in 2008, the Close the Gap campaign for Indigenous health equality was established, soon becoming a government policy. The campaign shows that significant improvements in the health, education, and employment outcomes for Aboriginal people can be achieved before 2030. Everything begins with us.
For those who have travelled overseas, language is the first step you take to bridging culture, and there are over 250 Aboriginal languages and 800 dialects in Australia. So let's do a language lesson, and if the teachers could take part and make sure the students are saying this with us, that would be great. Okay, first off, let's say hello in the Gamilaroi language used in northern New South Wales. Yama.
Yama May.
Yama Christine.
Another word that comes from the Darug dialect is walu, which means where are you going, or let's go over there, and is also accompanied by a body motion. Walu.
And this well-known sound is actually the word in Darug for come here, kui.
Often people wonder how to refer to Aboriginal Australian people. Indigenous means native to a particular place, while Aboriginal means inhabiting or existing in a land from its earliest times, or from before the arrival of colonists. Both words are okay to use, and in writing they must be capitalised for respect.
When referring to Indigenous Australian people, it is really important to use appropriate terminology, such as Indigenous Australian people, Aboriginal people, Torres Strait Islander people, and Aboriginal nations. Less appropriate terms include Aborigines, Blacks, Coloured, the Aboriginal people, Tribe, Clan, and Native.
Thanks, Borko. Hopefully we all learnt something today. And on Friday, At roll call, we'll be handing out paper hands where you can write something you learned throughout the week, and the prefects will be collecting them to hang them all around the school.
We would also like to thank Miss Pugliano, Miss Kai, and the teachers on the Aboriginal education team for their help and support in Naidoc Week.
There is an ancient Aboriginal saying that goes, "Traveller, there are no paths. Paths are made by walking." And we walk alongside our fellow Indigenous Australians on a path toward a better Australia. Yanu!
I come from the dream time, from the dusty red soil plains. I am the ancient heart, the keeper of the flame. I stood upon the rocky shore, I watched the tall ships come. For 40,000 years I've been the first Australian. We are one, but